It's finally time to do an updated studio tour. Let's check it out. Let's actually start by talking about the room. So this is just a spare room in my house. Before we moved in, this was kind of a den. There wasn't even a door for this room. It was just a big archway. So the first thing that we did was installed like a big 9-foot exterior door. It's solid wood, so it doesn't resonate super crazy. It keeps a lot of my sound in here and keeps a lot of the sound out there from coming in. But it's not a huge room. It's about 13.5 by 13.5, and the ceilings are about 9.5 feet. And when I moved in, it was just really a blank box. I did decide to treat it with prefab treatment instead of doing kind of a room within a room build. And I just did that because since this is a house, we'll probably sell it one day. I don't want to have to basically tear out walls, tear out a bunch of insulation. So all of the paneling that you see around the room is GIK paneling. The black traps that you see are the monster traps. I believe they're like 7.5 inches deep. And then the ones on the front and the back of the wall are actually the Alpha 6A traps. They're about 6 inches deep and they have the diffusion plate on the front. The reason that I chose these was because I'm not a super big fan of like a massively dead room. I like when there's still a little bit of liveliness. So rather than having everything be absorption, I just wanted those scatter plates to help out just a hair. And then if we pan up here, you can see that I have some clouds as well. Those are about 4 inches thick. And I just have them above the mixing position. And then in the corners, we have the corner traps as well. So it's all GIK. It was not cheap to do. I will say the panels sound great. The room sounds and feels amazing. I don't know if I would recommend them because I did see build quality issues and I've had other friends have the same issues. So this is not me saying to go out and buy GIK. There's a lot of acoustics brands. You could build your own. They're not that difficult. I'm just like the least handy person to ever exist ever. So the way that I've kind of set up this room, since it is a smaller layout, is I kind of have stations everywhere. So I have like synths and guitars over here. I have my main workstation over here. And then over to my left right here, we just have all of my outboard gear. We have a little, basically tabletop to just store extra stuff. And then behind the camera, we have a storage closet, kind of a shelf full of Knick Knacks. So throughout the tour, we're just gonna pop around from every different cove so I can explain everything kind of as I utilize it, because I sit here probably 80–90% of the time, and then I'll be over here messing with gear, I'll be over here working. So that's kind of how we're gonna organize this whole tour. So let's just go ahead and start by talking about kind of the main hub of the studio. So right here, we have my main studio desk. This is just I believe it's the Artista, maybe Arista. It's from AZ Studio Workstations. And what I like about this specifically is that I do have a little tabletop. I have a couple little pieces of rack gear up here, but really I have this because it has a fully weighted keyboard that's on a pull-out drawer. So the desk is super cool. I've had it since I basically moved into this room. And down here, I just keep a Juno DS88. I basically have this just so I can write on it, I can play on it. Everything's hardwired into the studio, so if I want to roll that out, I can just roll that out and have the option to have weighted keys. So whenever I was looking for a studio desk, having that was essential just so I could write from the comfort of my workstation. And then other than that, on top of the desk, we have my main MIDI keyboard, which is the Arturia Keylab 61. I use this for basically everything. And then we are running Mac, so we have the Magic Mouse, we have the keyboard over here. The entire studio is being run off of a docking station over here to my left. It's the studio right. We'll talk about all of that in just a little while when we talk about the producer cart. But other than that, that's kind of the main setup. I do have a couple things over here that are a little bit more exciting. So the only real gear other than the keyboards to talk about over here is I do have this little controller. This is for my interface. I use the RME UFX2, and this is called the ARC USB. This thing is amazing because I came from the world of like having the Universal Duo, like all of the Apollo stuff that has like the big knob. And so when I swapped to an interface, I wanted something that still kind of had that form factor where I could control all my gain and volume right here. But the cool thing about this is that it actually has snapshots. So if I go to snapshot 1, that's basically just my studio, everything coming out. Snapshot 2 is what I use when I do tutorials, and it has all of my vocal routing in it. Snapshot 3 is for when I'm tracking vocals for an artist. Snapshot 4 is all of my synths are on, so I can just play them as I want, and then so on and so forth. There's a mono button, you have multiple headphones out, you have a B speaker set, you have a dim switch, you have a talkback switch, and this thing was like maybe 150, 200 bucks. I think this is one of the best values in the entire studio, but that's really it for gear. This right here is like my first real interface that I ever got, so I kind of just keep it there. It's not even hooked up. I just kind of keep it as a reminder. of, you know, when I bought this was like the biggest investment that I had ever done with music. It was like maybe $400 or $500. And this was like a big, big, big deal to me. So I kind of keep it here until I need to replace it with gear, just to kind of remind me that like, that's kind of where it all started, and now I have all of this really, really cool stuff to mess with. Over in this kind of general vicinity as well, you'll probably notice the gigantic computer monitor. I get a lot of questions on this. This is a 49-inch wide Samsung GCX49. It's got like a terrible name. I think they rebranded it to the Odyssey, but essentially it's 1080 high and then basically 4K resolution wide. And the reason that I have this is because a lot of the time with like tutorials, I'll have like my OBS, I'll have all my meters and everything over on this side, and then I'm only screen recording the left side over here. So I can have what essentially looks like a full computer screen and then kind of my monitoring station over here. And this screen has been really perfect for that. And then if I'm just in Cubase, it feels like I'm literally in the middle of a session. It feels wild to produce on. And it's curved, so it's kind of killing some of those reflections that people worry about with a big monitor. I love this thing. I use it all the time. I have it close enough that it doesn't hurt my eyes. So for anybody that's ever wondering that, that's the main monitor that I use. Since we're talking about monitors, let's also talk about the studio monitoring. And I'm just using the ATC SCM25s. I upgraded to these last January. I've talked about them in a bunch of videos, but I decided to go with a 3-way speaker. Since this is a small room, I went with the smaller ATC. So I believe it's a 6.5-inch low-end driver, a 5-inch mid-cone, and then a 1-inch tweeter. And then I'm running a Dynaudio 18S subwoofer that's just kind of tucked behind the desk. So one sub that has multiple woofers in it, and then these, and that's pretty much it for monitoring. We'll talk about headphones in just a little while, but that's kind of my main station and my main hub. So let's move over to the actual kind of producer desk outboard area, since we're talking about kind of the setup of everything. I have 2 rack units. These are by Gator Frameworks. I believe they're the Elite rack. And I have one that's just a 10U rack with a drawer. I have one that has this nice little cubby over here. And then on top, this is where I'm running my docking station. I have my big external hard drive, and then my computer is just on a little stand right here. One cable basically plugs that little MacBook to control everything. And then on top of the desk, we have a couple pedals. We'll talk about more pedals in a little while, but we just have like a little tuner that I use really often. We have the JHS Emperor. This is like a tremolo and a chorus. This thing is incredible. You can do stereo out. So I love this. JHS pedals always takes care of me. And then we have the JHS Colour Box as well. They sent me this before they actually released it to do some beta testing on it. This thing is crazy. It's basically a 1073 in a pedal format. So you have kind of a parametric EQ. You have some gain and some saturation if you really start to crank this preamp. There's a high and a low gain. There's a high pass. You can actually run a mic into here. So this thing is basically a big ass preamp and a tiny little pedal. And it's really, really great. If anybody's looking to kind of get that crunchy, overdriven McGee tone, if anybody kind of wants a pedal that they could, you know, run a vocal through without having a rack format, this thing's crazy. And then talking about the actual gear inside of this rack, I like this. This one's got a nice little pull out. This is where I keep a bunch of like splitters, power supplies for microphones. You know, I just keep all the stuff that probably should sit on a table that would be really annoying up here, just down there for whenever I need it. And then everything is kind of running off of these flock systems right here. I just did a full video on that, so if you want to see more about it, go check it out. But I have the flock LT, and then I have the flock CX, so I can essentially plug, you know, microphones, instruments. I can, you know, run things from like all of my synths are kind of put into this patch bay down here, so I don't waste a bunch of really expensive ends. But I can essentially patch things into here, run it through my flock, and then my flock will control all of the gear on this side that we're going to talk about in 1 second. But flock system is set up and running. Traditional patch bay that literally every other piece of gear, I have pedals plugged into there, I have synths plugged into there. This is just so I can basically move anything where I want, and they're all kind of normal to preamps anyway. So my whole studio is set up to where if I want to turn on a synth or plug in a guitar, I can. It has a pre that's set up in my DAW, but without that, you know, if I want to move them around, I can. So everything's plug and play with the option to be modular. We have a little front-facing XLR patch bay here, and then for the interface, I already talked about it, but we're using the RME UFX2. And then to expand the I/O, we have a Ferrofish Pulse 16. This is just 16 line ends. This is actually what my synths all plug into. And then we have the ASP800 from Audient, just to give me kind of 8 extra, you know, junk mic pre's in case I need them. I don't use them too often, but I bought this forever ago. Decided to keep it just in case. And then down here, we have a little Line 6 pod. If I ever just want to plug a guitar in, play around, not really mess around with my computer, this is fun to just kind of jam on. This rarely makes it to a record, but it's fun anyway. And then for the second rack, the one that's on the right, we're running everything again off of a Furman, but we have the Newton channel strip. This is by Rupert Neve Designs. I use this basically for all of my vocals. This red and blue silk over here is just amazing if you want to kind of dial that in. That's kind of what the Rupert Neve Design stuff is really known for. This compressor is really nice and soft. I don't use it too much, but it's nice when we do like the podcast. The EQ over here, you can actually crank this. It's pretty silky, especially this like 16K. I have a really bright mic, so I don't use that as much anymore, but when I was running off of the Loudon, that was getting a bunch of use. And then below that, this was the first channel strip I ever bought. So this is the Heritage Audio HA81A. You can run this off of line or mic. So again, everything's kind of automatically run off of line level because of the CX unit anyway. But this is great. It's basically a 1073 style preamp and then an 81 style EQ. So you get a couple more parameters than you would get on like a 1073 style EQ. So this thing is great. It's by Heritage. I bought this literally like the day it came out. And then for compressors, we have the 1176 Rev D by AudioScape. This is just the traditional kind of blackface 1176. I love this. I actually thought about buying one from UA, but then I heard this one. It was so affordable. I had to have it. It'll even do the all buttons in. It's crazy. It's really good, especially for the price. Below that, we have an 1178. This is basically a stereo 1176, but based off of the Rev H, which is the silver face, and this thing will do mid-side, this thing will do left-right independent, this thing will do linked, this thing will do tons and tons. There's a mix knob over here, which is really nice. I use this all the time, especially now that I'm running it through the flock. I'll send stereo drums through here, stereo guitars through here. I'll put this on a mix bus sometimes. This is by Z&H Designs. The price is really good for what you get. And this thing is insane. I should probably do a whole video just based on this, but this thing crushes it on drums. And then the last thing down here is I have the Opto compressor by AudioScape, basically an LA2A. So for my vocal chain, a lot of the time I'll run my mic through the Newton and then through the 1176 and then through the 2A. And then by the time it gets into my computer, I don't have to do too much at all. This thing is kind of just set it and forget it, especially with this not really having many parameters. I love this setup. Chain feels pretty dialed in. I don't have a lot of hardware, but what I do have feels special. And then I like this because I just keep extra cords and cables and, you know, iPhone lights, stuff like that over here, just so I don't have to always go into the closet. And then we go to the top of the desk, and this is the power supply for my main microphone. I am using the Sony C800G. I bought this, I think in November. This thing is incredible. Since I've bought it, it's basically stayed on the mic stand. We'll go over my mic locker in the closet in just a little while, but this is what stays up. This is what I record on basically every day. Every client I've tried it on loves it. We do have the Stedman pop screen. Studios are funny because like this mic was wildly expensive, but this felt worse to buy. This was like $120 for a pop filter. I don't know why that felt worse than spending $10,000 on the microphone, but studios are weird like that, I swear to God. And then next to the mic, I keep this little table here that I can store headphones on. I can also wheel it out when we have clients here so they can just, you know, set a drink on it, set their phone lyrics on it. And then for tracking headphones, we use the Baritone 770 Pros. However, these have started to get phased out because I've been using a lot more of the 1770s. They sent me the Mark IIs last year, and I actually meant to buy another pair of these like last week because I had a vocal session. But these are just going to become backups real soon. These are my go-to for tracking. These are the 1770 Pros. And then next to that, we have the mixing headphones of choice, the Baritone 1990 Pros. Again, these are the Mark II. These are incredible. If you're looking for like an over-the-ear kind of open experience that you'd hear in like an ATC or a PMC, I think these things sound wildly good, especially for the price. I think these are competing with headphones that are $1,500. And then if that's not quite your flavor, shit, you prefer something a little bit warmer, if you mix more like live instruments, more jazz, these would be my go-to choice. These are the Neumann NDH30s. So when I'm mixing, if I'm doing something that feels a little bit more open, dynamic, warm, I might grab these. If I'm doing something that I need to be really bright and aggressive and punchy, like a pop track, a hip hop track, I'm grabbing the Baritone, but these are also great. that's kind of my headphone options for the studio. Next, I think we should talk about my little synth station and guitar station. So if we come over here, I have all of my synths on this 3-tier stand. This is from Black Panther Systems. I just made a little video on our Instagram about it, but this is by far the best 3-tiered stand that I've ever tried. I've tried multiple ones. This thing is sturdy. It was easy to assemble, and it's modular. So you can add like stands, you can add all kinds of stuff. I think if you're looking for a keyboard stand, Black Panther Systems are making the best ones in the game. They are a little bit of an investment, but when you're putting thousands and thousands of dollars of synths on it, I think you want it to be sturdy. I think you want it to look good. You want it to be sleek. So that's what it's all sitting on. And then for lighting, I'll talk about that before I even talk about synths because I'll get a billion questions. I just got this little light off of Amazon. It's basically a light that people put over their computer screen and you can bend it. It's got a little LED light behind it. You can see from my hand being blue. You can change the warmth or the intensity just by hitting this. And then on the other side, you can change the RGB colors. And so that's what I have sitting on top here, just because I couldn't do the options that I have down here, which are like LED bar lights. Every light in the studio is controlled on a smart system, even the Edison bulbs over in the corner. But these are full RGB, so sometimes they're blue, sometimes they're pink. When I actually want to play, I have the setting to set them all like a warm white. But bar light under here attached just with like pedal board Velcro, bar light under here attached with pedal board Velcro, and then that little kind of clamp light for a computer monitor. That's how I'm lighting all of my keys. If I don't have that, these are so hard to play in this room when it's vibey. So up top here, we have the Moog Subsequent 37. It's basically a sub 37 that also has a sequential function. This thing is great. I use it all the time for any kind of monophonic bass. I use it for monophonic leads. I mean, it sounds incredible. Let's flip through here. It's so fun. I'm a big fan of having live synths that I can actually play. This was a recent purchase. I got this like middle of last year. I love it. You can plug headphones straight in if you just want to jam with it. This thing is such a good purchase for not a stupid amount of money for Moog stuff. And then over here, we have the Juno 106. This is actually one of my most prized possessions in the whole studio. I actually got this as a birthday gift, I think 4 years ago from Miranda, my wife, who also runs Make Pop Music, who is the one behind the camera right now. You just saw her fabulous nails. But she got me this Juno 106. I believe the serial number is from 1984, and this thing sounds amazing. It gives you that Juno sound that you want. It's got that noisy chorus. I use this thing all the time. This is like probably my most used analog synth, especially for pop. This thing is incredible. So vintage, it's not the Juno X. I've had a bunch of people ask. I do think that thing sounds great. This though, there's just no match for it. And then down here, this is my new boy. This is the Polybrute 12 from Arturia. I used to have the Polybrute original, and I was talking to them and they were asking if I would ever want to try the 12, and I said absolutely. It's basically the original Polybrute, but now you can do 12 voices instead of 6, and there is full aftertouch for all 12 voices. So if we go to a setting, there's so much.
I didn't even do that.
Yeah. As you can hear by Miranda's bewilderment, if that made the edit, she just said, what the heck? This thing is wild. There is so much function. You can basically have an X patch and a Y patch, and then you can use this little ribbon here to control between them. There's a little knob down here. There's a Z function where you can press it and you can have all kinds of different modulation. This thing is the most powerful synth I've ever used. Arturia really crushed it. They took the Polybrute 6, which in my opinion was already a perfect synth, and made it even crazier. So I'll probably be doing a video on this one very, very soon where I make an entire song just with this. But if you're looking for an analog synth and you have a little bit to invest, this thing's incredible. It's got a bunch of onboard effects. I could spend 45 minutes talking about this synth, so let's move on. So I kind of hinted at it earlier. I said that I had a lot more pedals. This is basically my production board for pedals. So we have some Chase Bliss stuff and we have some hologram stuff on here. And these are so fun to mess with. I keep them on a board so I can just pull them out, but I'll run anything through them. I'll track through them, I'll reamp stuff through them, but we basically have the Onward by Chase Bliss, then we go into the Mood Mark II, and then we go into the Microcosm by Hologram, and then we go into the Chroma console by Hologram. And I can control all of these pedals with full MIDI function with the MIDI box by Chase Bliss. So the Hologram ones, you can just plug like a 5-pin MIDI into, but the Chase Bliss ones, they do MIDI through basically like a 1/4-inch cable, and this box will convert that. So if I'm wanting to add sauce to anything, if I want happy accidents to happen, if I need just like oozing with ear candy, I immediately go for all of these pedals. I think that they are one of the best investments that I've put into the studio over the past several years. These things are absolutely bananas. If you're looking to just really improve your sound without having to like get a crazy bunch of outboard gear, pedals are wild. I think they're so slept on in the studio, especially these three, just for weird shit that you can just record and take crazy stuff out of. These are all wild. This to me is just like the best multi-effects unit pedal ever. I'll just run vocals through this all the time. I don't even care. So pedals are a new thing for me. They're a new hobby. They're a new passion. I'm big on pedals. Definitely get yourself some pedals. Hologram and Chase Bliss, some of the best ones out there. Next, we have some of my most used guitars and basses. I have more in the closet that we'll talk about in just a little while, but this is definitely my most used. It's a Fender Strat American. I think this is the Pro 2, but it's in surf green. Any kind of pop record, that's immediately coming out. It gives you that single coil pop sound. It's built great, it plays really great. If I want bass, I have this Fender Jazz bass right here. I think this is one of the made in Mexico's. I didn't want to spend $2,000 on a bass that I rarely play, but I think that every studio should have a live bass in it. It adds a lot to a track, just to kind of have the nuances of live bass. And a jazz bass is my favorite for the kind of music that I make the most. Then back here we have what was probably my first like really good piece of gear ever. This is my Gibson Les Paul. I got this, I believe, when I was 12 or 13. I was big into guitars growing up. So for me, this was like a holy grail guitar. I played a lot of 80s music. I wanted to be Slash so bad. This is a mahogany. It's got a natural finish on it. I believe this was made in 2007. And I've had it ever since. I get it set up a couple times a year. Still plays great, sounds great. If you need a humbucker, a Les Paul is gonna do the job. Then we go to probably my newest purchase of a 6-string. This is the Gretsch Jack Antonoff signature guitar. This thing is great. It's basically a Gretsch Princess that has the electronics of something like a Fender Jazzmaster. So you have a rhythm and a lead section. You have tone wheels right here. You have tone knobs. This thing is great. Gretsch crushed this. Jack Antonoff crushed this. I use this all the time when I want kind of like an edge of breakup sound. I want something that is a little bit more gainy than something like the Fender, but not as thick and heavy as the Gibson. This is really great for like indie music, Americana music, just like laying down a lead. And it was not that expensive. Gretsch actually priced this really well for a signature model. So shout out to them for that. And then the last one that I have out here is just in the corner. This is actually my newest. This is a Gretsch Baritone. I got it to do kind of a McGee style tutorial. I was doing a lot of music like that, and I figured I might as well have a baritone. I think this thing was maybe $400 or $500. Great purchase. It's so fun to play. It just kind of unlocks a new part in your brain when you're playing a guitar that's kind of pitched in the middle of a normal guitar and a bass guitar. This thing is great. It's got the Bigsby on it. So I try not to use it because it'll knock it out of tune, but great if I need a baritone. And then over there, I have all the usual suspects. And then I keep all of my acoustics in the closet. I used to keep them out here, but I was finding issues that they were resonating a lot. So they're all tucked away in there. We'll go look at the closet, but before we do, I'll take a pit stop by my favorite corner in the studio. But before we go over there to show you more of my Knick Knacks, this is one of my prized possessions. Miranda got me this for Christmas one year. It's a signed Tony Hawk poster. I grew up skateboarding. I was a big skater, really into the Tony Hawk games, really into the Tony Hawk soundtracks. I'm so excited, by the way, for the remaster of 3 and 4. This is crazy. When she got me this, I was like, I don't want to hang up a plaque here. I don't want to hang up any kind of like marker for my career. I just want to hang up a Tony Hawk poster. It's the only thing I have hanging on the wall, and for good reason. That shit is badass. And then over here in the back corner, kind of next to the couch that people sit on, write on, whatever, this is like the one part of my studio that I didn't want to be so obsessed with gear that I had nothing personal. So this is all my fun personal stuff. I have, you know, books on sneakers. I love sneakers. I love sneaker culture. I have a Buzz and a Woody. Toy Story was the first movie I ever saw. It's one of my favorites, hence the Andy tattoo on my arm that you might have seen before. We have a Lego set that this company actually does where they print Neve desks. These are so hard to buy, but Miranda was able to secure one for me last year. And I went live on Instagram while I put it together. I'm not a Lego guy. I wish I was. It just drives my brain insane trying to figure it out. So for those of you that got to enjoy that live and watch me almost off myself, you were the only ones to ever see it. Nobody will ever see me do Legos again. But that thing is so sick. We have some bear bricks over here. Down here we have the YouTube plaque. It's a little ostentatious to be put on display, but I'm really proud of it. Me and Miranda have worked really hard for that plaque so people get to see it. Here we have a Jimmy Butler rookie card. I'm big into basketball. This was a gift from my friend Grayson. And then my other friend Alex actually printed me a 3D stand for that. And my friend Adam printed me a 3D stand for this. He printed me 3D stands for picks. Get you a friend in your life that really likes 3D printing shit, because that is a lifesaver. Next, we just have a little lamp. We have some, you know, smell good sprays. Studios get kind of musty, so wanted to stay fresh in here. Down here, we have a custom Funko of me and my cat, Chloe. This is from my friends Brett and Carissa. They made me a little music producer. It's got a little Siamese down there that kind of looks like a demon. I don't know if you can see it on camera. We've got a little stuff. I'm from Orlando, love basketball. We have the best mascot in all of sports. So he has this moment. We have a picture of me and my cousin Hope and my grandfather who passed away when I was young. Then down here, pictures of my kitties. This is Chloe, the Siamese. You might see her in the video. That was our cat, Sophie. She was the best, but unfortunately we lost her last year. So I still keep this in here just, you know, to remember her. Then we have some stones, you know. I guess I'm a little bit of a hippie at heart. Got a little meditation bowl. Got a bunch of otters. Everybody asked about the otters. I think it was just one of those things of like, you know, when you tell people that you like something a little bit and then all of a sudden everybody starts buying you stuff for that. That's kind of otters for me. That is, I guess, what people just want to buy me now. And they're the cutest animal ever, so I have no problem with it. But that's kind of just my corner of special stuff that I can look at when I'm feeling a little bogged down. It feels a little worky in here. It feels a little too professional. This is kind of what I'll just look at. Check out my toys, check out my crystals. I try to keep it there so I don't get too focused on gear. And this is the infamous closet that is in all of our videos. Most of the time it's closed, but when it has crept open because I forgot to shut it, there's a little bit of lore where people think I keep monsters in here, maybe like assistants or interns in here, clients that don't pay their invoices, but I assure you it's just a closet. It is just a big, messy, chaotically organized closet. So let's talk about what's in here. There's a lot of gear that I use, but oh my God, the AC in here is better than the studio. Over on this wall, we have kind of my cable wall. This is all pegboard that I got off Amazon. It's super cheap, super easy to do, and I have everything labeled like instrument and patch cables, XLRs, power cables. This is just so if I need something in the studio, I can come in, I can grab a couple patch cables, head out, and not have to sort through an insane amount of shit that is super disorganized. This is a game changer. I think this whole project costs like $60. So if you have space to put one of these in a closet or in your room, put a pegboard in there. I promise you it's gonna help out a ton. And then as we kind of pan around, you're gonna see a big collection of extra gear that we have. We have some monitors by Fluid. I tested these out on the channel last year. These are the Image 2s and these are the FX80s, I believe is what they call them. These were great. I honestly, if I'm being real, haven't even had a chance to dive in and check these out, because checking these out was a whole thing. These sound incredible, so worth the price. I recommended them highly in the video, but now I kind of keep them in here. I'm taking them on a riding camp next week, so I like having a second set of speakers if mine go down, if I want to travel with them, if I have a friend that needs to set up a studio real quick. The Fluids are my go-to for that. Then we have a couple acoustic guitars. These are my main ones. I got a little 12-string last year. This is from Yamaha. I think this thing was like 350 bucks, so not bad at all. I actually sent back one that got broken to me from Guild and sent that back, got this one instead, and have no qualms. Every time somebody comes in and they grab this, they've never played a 12-string, and for some reason it just inspires people to not put this shit down. So I've almost had to put a ban on like, you can only play with a 12-string for 5 minutes before we get into a session, otherwise we'll never start. People want to play this thing forever. Every studio who has somebody who can kind of mess with guitar, have a 12-string in there. These things are incredible. My main go-to acoustic is just this little guy right here. This is my Taylor 214 CE. It's just, you know, kind of a classic Taylor, middle of the line, not super, super expensive for them, but expensive in general. It just sounds bright, it sounds punchy. When I think of like acoustic guitar on a pop record, this is the guitar that I think of. I also love Martins. They're just a little dark for how I use acoustic most of the time, so I went with Taylor. It's a great little guitar. It was a big, big step up from my past acoustic. And then back here, we have a little Dean, like travel size acoustic that I got when I was a teenager. That's actually tuned up to Nashville tuning. And then this right here is just an Epiphone I bought off my neighbors for like 30 bucks. It sounds crazy. It's super warm. It's really dead sounding. I actually love this for like country and folk. So 2 different flavors. The Taylor's super bright and punchy. The Epiphone, kind of dead and kind of like flubby, but it's really, really cool, especially to only be like $30. And then we just have cases, extra MIDI keyboards, shit like that in the back. Very boring, very chaotic. And then the more fun side, this is kind of just my cubby unit. It's like the Calyx shelf from IKEA. Everybody has one. And I just have cubbies for, you know, extra cables. I have like tambourines, shakers, guitar strings. They're kind of chaotic, so I'm not gonna open them, but it's really nice to have some kind of storage system in here. And then up here, this is where I keep all of my other microphones. So if that Sony C800 out there is not gonna work for me, this is my immediate go-to. This is the Lauten Audio LT386. They also call it the Eden. It's a tube mic. There's polar patterns on it. There's filters on it, but you also have forward, gentle, and neutral. So it'll kind of give you a bunch of different flavors. That thing is absolutely incredible. If I need a mic and I'm not doing the Sony, that's my #1 pick. If for some reason neither of those work, this is gonna be my #3 pick. This is the Lewitt LCT 1040. So this actually has a control system that is out in that little pull-out drawer on my desk, where you can basically have this microphone be FET, you can have it be tube, you can have it be in a warm mode, a saturated mode, a clear mode. This thing is great. This was my go-to mic for a little while actually, until I got the Lauten, and then that was my go-to mic for a little while until I got the Sony. So between those 3 mics, I'll be honest, that's like 99% of what I use. If for some reason I have other things like acoustic guitar or a vocal that doesn't need to be so big and bright and punchy, this is a great mic. It's my budget choice. Lauten LA220, I think this mic is like $350. I think that's the best mic that you can get for under like $700. We have this Slate modeling mic back here. That was my go-to mic for years. I haven't used this in a long, long time, but I keep it around just to, you know, shoot out against the real C800. It's great. We have the JZ Black Hole. This mic is really funky looking, but it's super bright, super in your face. Every time I do this one on a shootout, people seem to really, really like it. And then in the mic bags down here, we have the Advanced Audio 251. I actually think I might have a tube in this that's kind of blown. So I need to actually send this back and have them take a look at it because something is not sounding right. But when this was in its prime, it sounded beautiful. I love a 251 style. And then beside that, we have what I think is the best budget tube mic on the market, which is the Lauten LA320. So if you don't have $2,000 for a tube mic, that's the best one on the market. If you do have $2,000, you could probably get, you could probably get like a used Eden if you can find a really, really, really good deal on it. Down here, we just have small diaphragm condensers, measurement mics, SM7Bs, mic switcher for when I live stream. And then if we go over here, this is where I keep all of my shock mounts. This is where I keep all of my mic clips, all of my assorted goods. And then over here, we have my travel interface. I use the Apogee Duet when I'm on the road. So it's nice. It's got this little docking station that you can essentially, do all of your I/O on the back. But if you don't need that, if you just need it to be kind of a small little thing, you can just take it off of that. It's beautiful, works great, sounds great. That's kind of my go-to. And then we just have lots of cases. I try to keep my boxes in case I need to sell anything or replace anything or return anything. But this closet gets very chaotic. I hope that I only showed you the good parts. That brings us to the last little spot. This is the studio couch. This is where all the magic happens. And by that, I mean, this is where most of the people write their songs in the studio. It's got a bunch of scratches for my kitties over the years, but I think it adds character. I love having a couch in the studio. If you have the room, having a couch or some chairs for yourself, for clients, is huge. But this is the back side of the room. If you don't see it that often in the studio, it's really boring. It's just a bunch of traps. But we showed you all of my gear. I talked about as much as I possibly could. I probably yapped and rambled way too much. But if you have any questions on my gear, please let me know in the comments down below. If I can link you anything, I'll try, whether it's an affiliate link or not. I'll try to mark if it is an affiliate link. But if you have questions on my lights, if you have questions on my cables, any of the boring stuff that we didn't dive into, let me know. But I had a really, really good time filming this studio video. This is a big undertaking, especially to do all the B-roll and organize it and clean the studio. But I've needed to do it for years. I always put it off because I'm always making upgrades. I'm always changing out things. But I think that with any studio, it's always a continual process. So maybe next year I do another one if I've changed out gear. Maybe the year after that I do another one. If you guys like the studio tours, let me know. I had so much fun filming it. But we'll be back next week with our normal content, and I'll see you guys really, really soon. Much love. Peace.